you're tuning in, you can just write where you're from just to get a sense where people are located. We're getting a sense that we're getting people from all over with this conference. Nice. Ottawa, Trois-Rivières, Quebec, Oakville, Ontario, Montreal. Very nice. Ohio. Nice. BC, Jamaica. Cool. Okay, great. Okay, Minneapolis. People are from all over. That's awesome. Montreal, Moncton. Cool. Welcome, everyone. So we'll get started. Let's see. Oh, I didn't do the live on Facebook. Okay, great. I'm just going to do. Okay. Okay, so we'll get started. Welcome, everyone. It's so great to see you here today. Welcome to the Power Skills 2020 5-day virtual conference. This is already day 2 of the conference. And if you've been participating in other sessions, we hope you've been feeling as inspired as I am. If it's your first session, welcome. You'll love this session. And check out the full calendar of all sessions this week until August 8th. So my name is Emily Salvi. I work as a career advisor at the McGill School of Continuing Studies, Career Advising and Transition Services. We call ourselves CATS. And I'll introduce you to my colleague, Nayo, and I believe it's just us from the office here today. Hey. Nayo, you can say hello.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see you again.
We're so thrilled to welcome today's speaker, Aaron Hurst. As a career advisor, let me tell you that I find myself having so many career conversations on purposeful work with people of all walks of life. I started doing some research and fell upon, the first I fell upon of Aaron's work was the Welcome to the Purpose Economy Fast Company article announcing his book, The Purpose Economy. And that's where I discovered Aaron's work, his fascinating work, amazing videos, the Fast Company articles, the Google, LinkedIn, Big Think talks, just to name a few areas and amazing platforms he's been on. So for those of you who don't know him, Aaron Hurst is the foremost expert on the science of purpose and fulfillment at work. In 2014, he released The Purpose Economy to bring global awareness to the rise of the 4th economic era in history, which is also an Amazon top-rated book. He's the CEO and co-founder of Imperative, the platform that connects and supports employees as peer career coaches. Imperative enables video-based peer coaching conversations across organizations that drive mindset and behavior changes, which increase leadership abilities, productivity, and fulfillment. So previously, he's as the founder of the Taproot Foundation, he catalyzed a 15 billion pro bono service market. He's written for or been featured in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg TV, Fast Company, and was named a LinkedIn influencer. And he's also a 3rd generation graduate of the University of Michigan. We'll send in the info where you can follow him on imperative.com and on his LinkedIn, or we'll just put that into the chat. Aaron, I can't tell you how excited we are for your workshop today. Thank you so much again for joining us today.
Oh my God, so glad to be here. And I think as I shared with you before, I spent much of my childhood in Canada, the much less glamorous Halifax, Nova Scotia, but it's great to, any chance I have to sort of work with folks up north these days, I sort of jump at it, and I love what you're doing and making this available to people who are in need. And this moment is just awesome. So I'm just proud to be part of it. And before I start, I would love to just know why people are on this in this workshop. So I'd love people just in the chat, just take 1 minute. If you can just share, like, what do you hope to get out of this session? Why did you sign up for this session? That'll just really help me make sure I'm focusing our time together as effectively as possible. So I'll just give you a minute right now. Just type into the chat, like, why in God's name did you decide to join us for this hour? What do you want to get out of this? It's great.
Aaron, you see the chat?
I do. I'm watching them come through. It's very exciting. It's like it's a drip of purpose.
Yeah.
Yep. Now they're coming in fast and furious.
Yeah.
Awesome. This is great. I'll give you another 10 seconds here.
Okay, that's really fast.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
This is fabulous. So I obviously could not read every single one of them, but I think I got sort of the feel of the whole group, and maybe we can capture these for later as well. So we can follow up if anybody sort of needs anything else, but super helpful. And thanks for doing that. So you've now defined the purpose of this session for yourself, which I think also is going to help make sure that you actually, achieve that through this time. And I'm just going to spend about 20 minutes talking you through the research and work around purpose at work and what does it take to have a fulfilling career. What are the questions you need to be thinking about? We're then going to actually do in the workshop a little bit of peer coaching. So you're going to get matched with someone else in this webinar, and we're going to give you some questions to really help you process what you learned and to begin to really answer some of the questions that you're posting here in the chat. And then we'll all come back together at the end and just reflect on that experience together and maybe how we want to move forward. So with that, I'm just going to jump right in. So as you shared, I previously was the founder and president of the Taproot Foundation, which was a nonprofit organization. Started in San Francisco, ultimately opened it across 7 different US cities, worked with the president to basically turn it into a $15 billion a year marketplace, sort of build that all out, and then worked with BMW Foundation to scale it to 30 countries from China to Costa Rica to, I think, Canada as well. We're working with C's, I got to throw that in at the alliteration. So China, Costa Rica, China among 30 countries where we sort of moved that model. And the core idea was nonprofit organizations, NGOs, they need marketing, they need technology, they need HR, they need finance, just like every company, but they're usually priced out of that market. And while lawyers have a tradition of donating their skills to nonprofits and NGOs, the same's not true to marketing, technology, HR. Certainly wasn't the case. So it was, how do we basically create a whole movement to have people make their work matter, to give what they know? And it was wildly successful because it really tapped into this desire to do something that's relevant, to not just volunteer, but to use your skills and to see that your skills really do truly matter, per our tagline. And what we heard over and over was, I find pro bono work so much more rewarding than a paycheck job, right? And that probably surprises none of you, right? And at first it was like great marketing insight. So, okay, we know how to market this. Like, do you find your job unfulfilling? Try Taproot, right? So it was like a great way to market. It was a great insight. But it's actually ultimately why I left Taproot to start Imperative. Because what I realized was that it was a lot like Disneyland, right? So Disneyland's like the happiest place on earth, or so it's advertised, right? But the sad reality is that with the exception of a few creepy people, no one lives at Disneyland, right? So no one actually lives there. So it's great to have the happiest place on earth, but if that's not somewhere you can live, like, we're not solving the problem. And I think the same thing was true. Like, I was giving people a supplement, something they could do on the side, but it wasn't addressing the core problem. How do they bring that back to their life? Because doing pro bono work as your full-time job is something very few people can do. So really wanted to understand, how do we enable everyone's work to be fulfilling? Because I believe strongly, based on what I saw, that you don't have to be doing work in a nonprofit. You don't have to be doing volunteer work to feel that sense of meaning and purpose. One of the very first things we did is we partnered with New York University and did a study of the US workforce and looked at how fulfilled are people in the workforce. And what we found was that 66% of people are unfulfilled in the workplace. So I just want to pause and have you think about that on a very personal level, like your friends, your family. Like, what does it mean that probably 2/3 of them are unfulfilled at work? And then think about that in terms of like an organization or a company, like to have that many of your people unfulfilled, what is that doing to their productivity? What is it doing to their cat? See, that cat looks like it's actually probably looking pretty happy about it, because I personally find cats to be evil. And I think they're like it's like a counterproductive, but that is an aside. This is a terrible thing. It's like hurting productivity, hurting cultures. And then if you think about it at a societal level, what does it mean that such a large percentage of people are not fully participating in the economy and society, et cetera? And later on, we actually partnered with LinkedIn and repeated this study globally. And what was really interesting was the countries that had the highest level of fulfillment, the thing that sort of indicated that, the greatest indicators I could find, was the degree to which women were treated with equality in the workplace. And the lower they did, the less fulfillment there was, and the countries that fully embraced women were the ones that had the highest fulfillment. So yet another case for equality in the workplace and sort of the important rising role of women in leadership overall. And the US fit squarely in the middle, because the US is not by any means leading the pack or at the bottom of that pack. So here's why this matters so much, and this is why this is so surprising to people. So you're not fulfilled at work. Who gives a damn? Like, so what? Go volunteer, go to a church, to a synagogue, go play sports. Problem is our brain doesn't work that way. So we found in a follow-up study that of people who said they were fulfilled in life, only 1% said they were unfulfilled at work. We are one sort of fundamental like unit, one brain, one mindset. And when we're not fulfilled at work, it means statistically we're almost certainly not going to be fulfilled in our lives. This is where purpose comes in. So when people know what fulfills them, their purpose, their score, they're 370% more likely to be fulfilled. That their score, that the difference between those that know what fulfills them and don't is 370% higher. That is like supercharging you as a human being. It's supercharging an organization. The simple act of knowing your purpose, of knowing your operating manual, radically increases your chance of being fulfilled. And yet most people have no idea what fulfills them or what matters to them. And that's why so much of, in part, the workforce is so unfulfilled, is we're all driving around without a map. We're all just sort of randomly driving around, and like, shockingly, we don't get to the destination. Shockingly, we don't actually design our work to be fulfilling. So purpose is something that I certainly did not invent. It's been around since like probably the first cavemen and women sort of looking at the stars and wondering like, why in God's name am I here? You had religions have been sort of a source of answering this. We've had philosophers, more recently we've got the Oprahs and Dr. Phils. I mean, we had so many people sort of addressing this issue, but much more from an observed behavior standpoint, much more sort of from a faith-based standpoint. And the problem with those is they don't scale effectively, and they're tied to so much other noise that doesn't allow you to like actually embrace them without all the other sort of components. What we've done at Imperative is we've invested millions of dollars partnering with leading research universities as well as leading companies like PwC and LinkedIn to really figure out and develop the data science behind purpose and to really figure out the sort of predictive models for purpose. And this has really led to the insights that go from this like overwhelming challenge down to saying like, oh, okay, here's what you need to do. Here's the simple recipe that works. The first thing I want to share about this is that we found there are 3 myths that actually prevent people from getting meaning and purpose in their work, and that most people have these myths as a barrier. So before we talk about what you need to learn, I want to help you unlearn 3 things. You ready to unlearn? It's like going in reverse. So unlearning these. So the first one is, we found the majority of people, when you think about a purpose, they think about it as a cause. Like, I need to know what my cause is in order to find a sense of purpose. I need to work at a nonprofit to find my purpose. We actually found no industry has more than 50% of people who are fulfilled. We found miserable people that were working saving babies, and we found people who were doing accounting in a basement who were deeply fulfilled. Like, the cause is not the source of the purpose. It helps a little bit, like it's definitely a variable, but it's not the thing. And the problem with cause is that it externalizes the responsibility to say, I haven't found that thing. And that's not really where purpose comes from. It comes from inside you. So we need to let go of this idea like there's a cause. Secondly is a revelation. Like, people honestly believe, metaphorically, that if they climbed a mountain, they would get struck by lightning and be given like, oh, my purpose, right? And there'd be like a sound that would come out of the sky, da, 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 like, here's your purpose, right? And it sounds ridiculous, but it's actually how most people actually operate. They're just expecting some event, something to happen to them, something they're gonna read, and suddenly like the cloud's gonna clear and like, oh, like I know what my purpose is. Sadly, that does not happen, except for a very few people who have something highly traumatic often happen in their life that causes them to do the internal work to actually figure out what matters to them. It's not that anybody's giving them an answer. It's just that they deal with something so awful, like a death, some kind of loss, that forces them to just do really deep reflection work. And that's what causes it to feel like a revelation. But it's actually just that they're forced to deal with who they are. Final one is it's a luxury. A lot of people are like, purpose is lovely, fulfillment's lovely. Once I have a yacht, once I have $1 million, like I'll focus on that. Absolutely not the case. We have found many, many wealthy people who are miserable human beings, and we found people in the most abject poverty that are way more fulfilled than they are, right? This is just absolutely not the case. The sort of leading early proponent around purpose in this last century was Viktor Frankl, who talked about finding meaning as a slave laborer in a concentration camp, right? I mean, if he can find meaning in that experience, like there's no job that I know of where you shouldn't be able to find meaning. There's no economic level you get to where all of a sudden, like you get purpose with your paycheck, right? That's just not the case. So anyone's like, worry about that stuff later, that's for later in your career, statistically just nonsense. Like we need to let go of that, and you need to focus on purpose day one and every day, or else it's not going to happen, because purpose comes from within you. It does not come from something outside of you. And until you accept that, you're just going to be chasing sort of fantasies and ghosts out in the world. So just encourage you to all unlearn these things. Stop waiting for revelation. You are worthy of it. You need it now. And actually people who embrace purpose are actually more likely to get promoted and to succeed. So actually, if you want to have it, you know, economic success, like actually embracing purpose gets you there. It's not something that happens afterwards. And don't tie it to this idea that you have to work for a nonprofit or find sort of a cause. I want to share one specific dimension of what defines purpose, because I think it'll help you get your head around this sort of the science behind it. And we actually have a whole assessment platform that can assess this for people as well. One of the main dimensions we found psychologically that defines what brings meaning and purpose to people is the elevation at which they get the most meaning from making an impact. So roughly 1/3 of people get the most impact from helping individuals. They need to feel like their work directly helps people. They need to see that to feel a sense of purpose. So think of like a doctor, right? Like being able to help patients directly and feel like you help somebody really matters. Whereas for me, if I was a doctor, like the second time I saw the same symptoms, I'd be like, I already saw these symptoms. Like, I don't really want to do this again. That is a fundamentally different psychological profile around purpose. Second level is organizational. People who feel like, you know, I really want to make an impact on teams and organizations. I want to build institutions. This is what really gives me an incredible sense of meaning. And it's great to help individuals, but if I'm not helping build an institution, a team, organization, it doesn't feel as fulfilling for me. And then finally, there's people who are saying like, it's great to be a doctor. It's lovely to, you know, maybe run a hospital, but like, unless we can bring down the cost of healthcare, unless we can solve, you know, find a cure for COVID, unless we can solve these bigger issues, who cares? I want to be part of addressing something much bigger. And we found that across, you know, the labor force, it basically breaks down roughly 1/3 of people are dominantly in each of these. So just really quickly in the chat box again, just guesstimate based on your own experience, which one of these do you think is most likely the dominant place that you find meaning? And just put that into the chat box just as a way to share with the group. And I'll give you 15 seconds to do it. Fabulous, see that all coming in. And I don't know is a very real answer as well. And I think that's part of what all this work is about. It's about a constant process of like having these ideas in your head and just testing them with your experience in life as you go through it. So speaking to this, the way that we have found in our research that you make the greatest impact on not just knowing your purpose, but actually truly like applying it to the work you're doing and to continuously keeping it front and center, because there's so many pressures to move away from your purpose, to move away from what fulfills you, whether it's technology, whether it's, you know, distraction within the organization, whether it's pressure from here or there. There's so many things that push us away from our path that it's really critical to, we found, have social support where you're going through this with someone else or with other people. You're not doing it alone, and that you're acting as what we call peer coaches for each other. You don't need to hire an expensive coach. Actually working with peers that are going through a similar journey and asking each other questions, helping push each other, being champions for each other, we found was the behavior that predicted whether or not someone was actually not only knowing their purpose, but actually living it and adapting as they go. They're basically crafting their job, crafting their career as they go. And what's interesting is when we ask people, like, where do you learn inside a company? The answer most people expect of other people is they talk about my manager, or it's like HR. It's some kind of, it's hierarchical or organizational. But the reality is that the majority of people actually learn the most from their peers. And I just really challenge you as you think about your career to think about how do you constantly build peer relationships so that you have people that are working with you and you're not looking to the organization, you're not looking to your manager for your primary source of learning, but you're actually looking to your peers as that source. And whether it's higher ed, whether it's in the workforce, like research study after research study is showing peers are how we learn. And there's not a lot of infrastructure right now to support that. That's what Imperative does. And that's why we're in that space. So we're gonna actually now do some peer coaching. So hopefully you all are gonna absolutely love this. So I wanna share sort of how this is gonna work. So you're gonna get into groups of 2, with the exception if we have an odd number of one group might have 3 people in it just because of the way math works. And we're gonna take about 15 minutes. And what you're gonna do is one of you is gonna start as a coach and you're gonna ask a question. The other person's gonna answer it. And then you flip back and you go and have the person who answered the question ask the question and listen, and then you go on to the next question. So you're going back and forth like a tennis match, asking these questions. So that's sort of the process. And we're gonna do breakout rooms using Zoom to make this happen. So these are the 3 questions, and I encourage you to right now, if you can, just take a screenshot of the screen so you have these 3 questions with you. So I'm gonna talk through each of these really quickly just to help you sort of anchor to them, but I encourage you to take a screenshot. So the first is, when did you first realize that work could be about more than status and a paycheck? Like, what was the moment when you first realized that work could be about money and a status? So not just about ego, not just about money. And then when was the last time you did something that was meaningful to you? What was it? Like, why was that meaningful to you? It could be at work, it doesn't have to be at work, but when was the last time you did something that was truly meaningful to you? And then finally, what role do you want purpose and meaning to play in your career? So we're gonna give you about 15 minutes to do this, and my friends are gonna partner all of you and set that process up. And then we'll give you a warning when we're at about 5 minutes left and 1 minute left so you know what's coming. So happy conversations. I can't wait to on the back end hear how they go.
Hello,
Hello?
Hello?
Aaron, are you
Right.
the host?
I'm the host. Sorry,
Aaron?
who's talking?
Nio, you're the host?
Yeah.
Okay, I apologize because I just got in.
Rob, do you want me to put you in a breakout room? There's actually 20 going on now.
Well, I think I am if I'm with you and Aaron and Karen, or not.
No, you're not in a breakout room. Let me just find. So it's Jérôme who's talking now?
Yes?
Yes, okay. I'm gonna assign you to breakout room number 1.
Sure, okay, thank you.
There you go.
In breakout room.
Take also I could not join the breakout. Great. Can you send me back to 37, Liliana? Yeah. 37. Okay, 37 seems to be full, Liliana. I'll put you in 33. Okay. So perfect. So we have 21 people who didn't join the breakout rooms, but the vast majority signed in.
I know some people mentioned they were driving, or maybe some people just weren't ready to connect with other things yet.
Yeah, for sure. Craig Thomas in the last session, he was driving and with the video chat.
Incredible.
Not recommended, but yeah. Okay, great.
So we done the 5-minute warning? Are we?
Oh yeah, we can send a.
So now there's 2 minutes left.
Great. 2 minutes. Yeah, the hardest part when you pair people in teams of 2 is if only one of them joins, then they're all left alone.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of yeah.
And people were logging off as they were being joined.
Yeah.
Oh,
I saw
it's harder with this context. People are like on cars, etc. We usually do it with inside a company where it's like expectations clear than in this kind of environment.
Sure.
Oh, great. I'll be back in a minute.
No problem.
For sure.
Yeah, so for sure it's different than in the tryouts.
Oh yeah, for sure.
A lot more people to throw in, but this was fun. Okay.
Okay, so there's only 20 minutes left when people come back.
Yeah, 1 minute.
Oh wow, it's pouring.
I'm getting ready to open up.
Okay.
And there you go. Letting people back, close all rooms.
Nice.
When you click close, it takes 57 seconds. So
Okay, it's the last
Perfect.
minute. Okay.
We'll be fine.
great. Fantastic.
And do you need something at the end time to close, or am I closing?
We usually just close really just
Okay.
like last minute. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'll hand it off.
We were in the middle of a session and it kicked me out. And I'm like, no.
Oh, sorry.
Oh,
Did you receive the reminder, Mina?
I did receive the reminder. I must have clicked it by accident. I'm like, no,
Okay.
nothing.
yeah.
But it's very
All good.
interesting.
Hope you had fun in there.
Yes, it was actually very interesting. I do this very often, the breakout sessions with my own social enterprise. And regardless of how long we give, it's never enough. So I don't know if you guys feel the same way.
Yep.
Yeah. 15 minutes is just enough to get started, and then yeah.
Yeah.
Jill enjoyed that way more than she thought she would. Glad to
Welcome. I guess we got everybody back, looks like. So first of all, just welcome back. I would love to just hear what stood out for people, what they got out of the conversation. And wonder if a few people wouldn't mind sort of coming off mute and video and just sharing sort of a highlight or something that sort of struck them in the conversation or something that they wanted to share. So don't be shy.
We have Celine here.
Hi, thank you, by the way, for this wonderful webinar and the opportunity to go into those breakout rooms. I think it really helped a lot. I was with 3 other people, so we were 4 sharing, and to hear other people sharing the very personal things. I want to thank them and thank you for letting us do that. I found that. What was striking to me was that the second question, when was the last time you did something that was meaningful to you, and what was it, was actually the most difficult to answer, because it's not a common thing. I mean, I think I've had a longer life than the young people I was paired with, so I had a little advantage there, but it's not obvious. And I think also for number 1, it seemed like it was a really gradual thing, and maybe even they're still realizing now that maybe it's more about more than just status or paycheck.
Yep.
That was very interesting.
No, and I think a lot of us have been raised to think that work is about money and paycheck or status, but the people actually who are most successful are the ones that actually don't pursue those 2 things. They're the ones that pursue purpose and ends up leading to the paycheck and to status. So it's sort of counterintuitive, but it's a really important distinction. And research study after research study has shown that leads to the stronger outcomes. But thank you for sharing that. Who else would like to share something from their conversation?
I guess I could go if nobody's going.
Yeah, please.
Hi, my name is Mina Dolwani, and I had a great chat with Antonetta, and she works with McGill. And it was really enlightening to see, we all are trying to do things to make a difference, and learning from her how she's trying to incorporate her passion in art, which is quite different, but her passion in art to bring light to environmental costs, I think recycled paper. It was really exciting, but also the fact that she is in the admin field, and I started my career as a receptionist for the nonprofit, and now I am a founder of a social enterprise and a faculty at a community college. I think the career trajectory in knowing where passion can lead to purpose and how purpose can make it into a career definitely stood out for me. Thank you. Thank you, Aaron.
That's great. Thanks for sharing. I think there was someone else who was trying to share as well. So
I feel, sorry, my name is Jerome Sestek, and Aaron, I apologize. I came in late because for some reason I mixed up the time. So I don't want to say anything that's really inappropriate or off the subject, but what I was saying momentarily in the short time I had in the breakout room is that, you know, I think that a person can ultimately make a choice in regards to whether or not we are going to be passionate about what we're doing and enthusiastic. When my comment was that, I mean, if we are, you know, choosing to do something that's going to probably take up most of our most important time in our life, it is important to make the choice that you are going to be passionate or enthusiastic about it. Now, sometimes people think it is something that just happens to you, being passionate or enthusiastic, but I think it's also something a person can choose to do. And as a consequence, it all becomes meaningful, it becomes relevant. But in addition to that, having a good paycheck does make a difference. I think it's a little bit harder to be passionate and enthusiastic about whatever you're doing if, you know, it's not rewarded monetarily.
no, I think that's no, absolutely. And I think what we've seen, as long as you feel like you're being paid fairly and you're able to make your ends meet, that that is less of a distraction. If you're not getting if you're not getting paid at that level, or you have that insecurity, it is something that is can be very distracting from being fulfilled. So being able, yep.
If I can just say one other thing, because Celine is shaking her head. I did do music, classical music for 25 years, and I was extremely passionate about that. And there weren't really any monetary rewards significantly associated with that. But I think I have found that in this evolution of my particular life, maybe not related to others, that you know, having a good paycheck does make a difference as well. So I don't want to just make it sound like, you know, it's all boiling down to money, but I think it helps.
So thanks for sharing that. And I think there's actually a study that was done out of Berkeley that looked at passion and purpose, and actually found purpose is much more correlated to success than passion. And purpose is really much more about the why behind what you do. It's much more about the motivational side of it, and passion tends to run like sugar. So think about if you just took 2 tablespoons of sugar, like what that would do to you. Whereas purpose is more of a protein, where it's something that gives you sort of consistent, healthy energy. So just really encourage you to think about like how those 2 things show up. So we don't have much time left. I wanted to share a little bit more with you and sort of challenge you as we sort of end this conversation, given I think a lot of you had, you know, are really at a point in your careers where you're thinking about, you know, where am I? Am I in the right place? What am I looking for next? What's the right fit for me? So I talked a lot about what purpose isn't, right? We talked about it's not a revelation, it's not a luxury, and it's not a cause. The 3 things that are the sort of true sources of fulfillment and work, and this is where you really need to focus your energy if you want to be fulfilled, and they all matter. You can't go without any one of these. So the first one is relationships. We are social creatures, and if we don't have meaningful relationships at work, no matter what we're doing, no matter how passionate we are about it, we will not be fulfilled for very long. You need relationships, which is part of why this pandemic's been so hard for so many people, because that piece has been much harder to have when people are not sort of working together. For those that are, you know, working from home or not working. Relationships are really about having people in your life who are positive, consistent, and with whom you can be vulnerable. Right? And you need those types of relationships at work. And we found people, again, you know, that are doing work that's very cause oriented, you'd think is full of purpose, but they didn't have a culture where the relationships were set up that way. And they therefore were not fulfilled. So one of the best pieces of advice I was ever given was, you know, look for a job where you want to work with those people every day. And they're people for whom you want to have like true relationships where you can be positive, consistent, and vulnerable. And even if a job sounds great, if the people are not people that you feel like you can have that kind of connection with, like it's not worth it. Same thing like when you're, you know, interviewing and talking to a manager, like, is this someone I feel like I can be, you know, we're gonna have a relationship that's positive, consistent, and I can be vulnerable in. That's a huge predictor. And so just collecting and nurturing relationships matters more than the subject matter of your job. The second one is impact, which we've talked about. We need to feel like our work is making a difference. It doesn't have to be, solving for climate change. It can be like, I made 3 people smile today. That's an impact, right? So really thinking about, what are the daily impacts? Because actually, when I've had like big impacts, it's been less fulfilling to me than the daily like little impacts of helping someone a little bit here or there, doing something that was a breakthrough. Like, how can you structure and define your job so that every day you at least have one thing that you feel like was a meaningful impact, no matter how small it is, and to think about how can I approach my job differently? A great story about this actually came out of research, I think it was at Yale, that talked about hospital orderlies, sort of the people who clean hospital rooms, and how this is a terrible job by like every single measure, right? Like you're not treated well, you're dealing with like human, like feces and all God knows what all day, but they found people who actually found it very fulfilling. And it wasn't the job that was doing it, it was actually that they were doing what's called job crafting, and that they were building relationships with the patients. They were doing things to take care of the patients that weren't part of their job, but they were basically finding things to at least make sure they were doing something meaningful each day. So they weren't a victim of the job, they created the job that they wanted out of the circumstance, and therefore found it deeply rewarding. So that's when you think about impact, I think back to those orderlies and how, often the patients would say, like, this is the only person actually cared about my family visiting. There's story after story of orderlies singing and telling jokes to patients, right? Like, definitely not part of the job description. And the final one is growth. If we are not constantly stretched, if we're not constantly pushing ourselves out of our comfort zone, no matter the relationships and impact, we will not sustain fulfillment. So we need to find that growth. So, again, looking at a job or any given day, what are you doing this month, this week, this year to push yourself, to stretch yourself? And it may not be, again, like the orderlies, like the day-to-day what your role is, but how can you do things around it to put, like, actually push yourself and to grow out of your comfort zone? So those 3 things are really the things you need to cultivate in your job, and they're possible in any job. It's just certain jobs where you have more autonomy, you have more ability to do them. Certain jobs where the culture is such that you can build relationships, it's easier. But to take ownership of that and not see it as like something that is owed to you. It's not something that someone's going to give you. You've got to create that for yourself. So don't put the sort of selection of the perfect career, the perfect company as a decision, because there's plenty of miserable people at companies that everybody thinks of as the greatest places to work, and there's plenty of the opposite. One person, a mentor of mine, said to me, the grass isn't greener on the other side. The grass is greenest where you fertilize it. And I think as a culture, we tend to spend a lot of time looking at other people's lawns, looking at other grass and sort of thinking about, oh, it'd be so much better there, running away from our problems instead of realizing like, wait a sec, I'm not even watering and fertilizing my lawn. No wonder it's brown and it's not sort of thriving, right? And yet in our culture, we do very little to fertilize our own lawn. We do very little to take care of ourselves. And if we don't do that, it doesn't matter, how great the company is, how great the job is, you're not gonna get what you need out of that. So as we come to a close, what we've really seen in the research is that this has almost entirely to do with mindset. It is not the job, it's actually mindset. So when you sort of talk about a purpose-driven career, that actually is more about inside you than it is an external thing. And that there's basically, like, simply put, these sort of 2 paths that you can take that are a mindset and about how you just show up. One is purpose-oriented, where you just see everything through the lens of how can I build great relationships, how can I make an impact, and how can I grow? You're paid for that, you succeed because of that, et cetera. But that's sort of how you're approaching decisions for a job, how you show up every day, how you, like, at the end of the day, reflect and say, how was my day? That it's through that lens of relationships, impact, and growth. In the research, we see this sort of other model, which is sort of the cliche, I would say, capitalist American model of seeing work as being a necessary evil, something you wouldn't do if you didn't have to, seeing it as being about the way in which you have to prove that you're a worthwhile human being, seeing it as something where it's about climbing the ladder, sort of getting ahead, stretching to sort of prove yourself because you don't have enough self-worth in yourself to say, I'm great no matter where I work. That's not defined by somebody else. And we've seen with folks in this other category who are punching the clock and are focused this way that they consistently are not getting paid as much, they're not being promoted, and they're not fulfilled, they're having healthcare issues. Like, this is not a good path to go, and yet it is the dominant sort of story in careers. And I think just really want to challenge you to think about every day when you wake up, which of these 2 paths am I going to go down today? And if you go down the right one enough days in a row, it starts to become a habit, and it starts to get embedded in how you think. And all of a sudden, you're seeing opportunities. Because when you think about the world in terms of relationships impacting growth instead of where can I get a raise, where can I get more money, where can I get more recognition. When you're looking for ways to make more of an impact, the funny thing is like that's actually what leads to promotion because you're increasing your impact. If you're looking to get promoted, having great relationships is the way that happens. If you're looking to get promoted, growing is the way that happens. So it actually puts you in the position of being in control and constantly looking for ways to be more effective. So the real irony of that is like going to the right path actually gets you what you wanted on the left-hand side. Whereas going to the left-hand side makes sure you never get, you're unlikely to get those things and you're unlikely to get the things on the right-hand side. So before I hand this off, I'd love to just, going back to the chat, the third question was, what is one thing or how are you planning to commit to taking the path on the right? Like what's one thing you're gonna do for yourself? So I'd just love to have you each to share. I'll give you like a minute in the chat. Like what's one thing you're gonna do to sort of help make sure you're on that path coming out of today's conversation? It can be small. Could be having these conversations, those questions with other people. Could be setting up a morning reminder in your calendar to remind yourself about relationships impacting growth. Could be appreciating what you have to start with instead of starting from scarcity. Just giving you some things in case you're getting stuck. Doesn't have to be big. Looking at the responses. Stop comparing myself to other people. I love that. That wins the gold star for the day. That is a fool's errand, and it's something we all are guilty of, even myself who practices this stuff all the time. It's so hard. So thank you all for having the courage. Solving for this is not only going to make you more fulfilled, more successful, it's going to improve your life overall. It's going to improve your family. It's going to improve everyone around you, your team. And the only way we're truly going to change the world, speaking of purpose, is if we can get everyone into this mindset, because this is the mindset that's going to enable us to have the courage to face the greatest challenges we have and to always lead with hope instead of fear. Because at the end of the day, what purpose is about is hope. And the left-hand side is about fear and scarcity. And if we can all make the shift, help our families make the shift, our coworkers make the shift, fast forward a few years, and like you actually have changed the world. So just thank you for having the courage for being on that path. And I know some days you won't take that path, but try to remember always where you want to be going. And with that, I just want to thank you all. And I'll hand it back over to our hosts.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Aaron. Such an amazing session filled with, you have so much passion, such an engaging session, and I feel like it comes right through the screens. A very big thank you for the attendees for being here at the Discovering and Activating Your Purpose. And Aaron, you shared so many meaningful insights. There was one question about your stats. Can people learn about your research and the findings of your research on any of your websites? Yeah, so Imperative has a resources section with our core research there, which is available. And then I do pretty regular articles on LinkedIn, sort of discussing that research. So I think I've got about 130 articles at this point, maybe. So that's a great place to sort of just go into different topics. So those would be the places I would recommend starting. Fantastic. So we have that. We're putting that into the chat right now. Thank you so much for joining us and for really making us think about the things that matter. It's about purpose. It's about the small things and finding your purpose in the small things and not getting overwhelmed with making that large impact that sometimes feels just way too overwhelming. And you really broke it down for us with some, more action steps that we can, and reflection pieces that we can take home. Thank you so much, Aaron. And I put in the contact info anywhere else where people can reach you. If anybody has any questions, always feel free to email me, aaron@imperative.com. And we, as a company, mostly work with companies to help them basically change their cultures by doing this. So if any of you work at organizations where that's of interest, of course, we'd love to talk to you about that. That's fantastic. Thank you. We're definitely going to be reaching out to you for McGill. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you very much for another session at the Power Skills 2020 conference. And up next is, we already started another session with Robert Wise. There's going to be Kit Vallow and many others today and for the rest of this week. Aaron, thank you once again. We're so appreciative. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you. Thank you. Cheers. Cheers. Bye, everyone. Thank you. Thanks for joining.